Hey, good morning, Choice Residential. Hope your day's off to a fantastic start. Today, I want to talk about documenting the repair negotiations or repair credits that you've had following a home inspection. So, again, as we talked about before, your best strategy typically is to negotiate a repair credit instead of any actual repairs that are going to be made before closing. So, let's start with how to document that. Typically, the best way to document the amount of money you've gotten as a repair credit is to simply amend the contract using the agreement to amend contract and add that to seller paid closing costs. So if you agreed to a $2,500 repair credit for various repairs and there were $0 in seller paid closing costs as part of the original contract, then you would simply amend the contract using the agreement to amend and go from $0 in seller paid closing costs to $2,500 in seller paid closing costs. That's the most seamless way to get that $2,500 to the buyer because on closing day, it will reduce their costs by $2,500. Now, you want to make sure that if that number is getting elevated, let's say that instead of $2,500, it was $15,000, then you want to check with the buyer's loan officer and lender to make sure that they can actually use that amount of closing cost assistance. Because if you apply a closing cost credit that is more than the buyer can use, the buyer is at risk of actually losing that difference and it going back to the seller. So if that number is getting large, make sure you are checking with the lender first to make sure they can use all of it. An alternative method, especially when that number does start to get large, is to have that money paid to a contractor at closing. So you would use the due diligence request and agreement form and say something to the effect of seller agrees to pay $15,000 to ABC Contracting at closing. That way, a check for $15,000 will be made to ABC Contracting at closing. The buyer can take possession of that and use it to pay for the repairs that are being made. Now, when you go that strategy, keep in mind that you will need to get an invoice from ABC Contracting for $15,000, provide that to the closing attorney, and they will apply that out of the seller's proceeds on the closing statement and cut a check that the buyer can take possession of after closing. Keep in mind, anytime you are writing something up that discusses repairs, you don't want to provide that to the lender. Again, in the scenario we just talked about, this is simply the seller paying a contractor on their side of the closing statement. So that's not something that pertains to the buyer's lender anyway. Now, if you are going the route of having the seller actually make repairs, then you need to be very detailed about how you write those repair requests up. It's not sufficient to simply reference a particular item in a home inspection report because there could be ambiguity about what in fact needs to be done. So make sure you are using detailed words to describe what the buyer's expectations are with respect to those repairs. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, even with your best efforts, often there are opportunities for people to disagree or have confusion on what was supposed to be done. Again, this is why I encourage you to strive for repair credits rather than repairs actually being made. But if you are going to be writing these repair requests up, then you want to read your own request and look for opportunities for confusion. Try to pretend as though you are going to find a loophole in the repair request that you just wrote. How could somebody misinterpret it from what you intended? You want to read it in that context through that lens so that you can help establish any gaps in clarity that may exist in these repair requests. I'm always happy to help look over these, but again, even me looking at it who hasn't been in the house, didn't have a conversation with the home inspector, it can be challenging to really make sure that we are being as crystal clear as possible. So if I haven't scared you sufficiently enough from actually trying to write up repairs for the seller to make, feel free to have that discussion with me if you're ever in a situation where it looks like that's where the negotiation is heading, and I'll help you work through that for the best available outcome for our clients, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side. So as always, if you need me, I'm just a phone call away. Until next time, take care.